Welcome to Profit and Prosper, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are ready to make some money while doing what they love. On this podcast, we're going to pull back the curtain and talk about all things business and money. But I promise you, this is not your typical boring numbers talk. I'm your host, Sarah Young, a CPA and CFO with over a decade of experience in finance, business, and leadership. I'm going to share everything I've learned from helping my clients grow more profitable businesses and keep more of what they earn while growing my own successful business along the way. You'll feel empowered and confident that you too can grow your wealth, live a rich life, and have an impact. Stick with me and you might even start to think that finance is fun. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for episode 2 of the Profit and Prosper podcast. In this episode, I want to dive deeper into the very first step of the framework that we went through in episode 1 to get really clear on what your profitable and prosperous life looks like. So in episode 1, I laid out the steps that I want everyone to go through to define their financial strategy, their profit strategy, to intentionally drive cash flow, create a profitable business, and build wealth. The very first step of that strategy was to get really clear on the end goal. And I realized that we're in February, we're past the season where everyone's, talking about goals for the year and what they're going to accomplish. We're probably even at the point where some of the things that you set out to do are already maybe not as on track as you wanted them to be for the year. But I want to talk about goals anyway. And in this episode, we're going to talk more about longer term goals, not so much what that might look like for your business in 2022. But I want to talk about it anyways because my approach to setting this long-term goal for your business is different than what a lot of people do when they set business goals. I know this because I have worked with enough business owners to know that they cannot answer the questions I'm going to ask you most of the time because they've not really stepped back to think about it, whether they haven't taken the time to, because as entrepreneurs, I know we, myself included, get really busy doing the day-to-day stuff in our business, taking care of our customers, that we don't always take the time to work on the business. I think a lot of people also, when they think about actually living a rich life and making money and enjoying all of the hard work that they've put in, especially for women, I find we tend to have resistance to that. And there's this sort of like fear and imposter syndrome comes up, and all of these things can result in you not knowing where you really want to end up in your business. So when I ask you questions like, how do you define long-term success in your business? What does it mean for you to live a rich life, both financially and non-financially? How are you going to reach your financial freedom goals and time freedom goals that you have already set in your business, but what tactical things will you do to actually get there? And what does that really look like in a specific way? How are you going to exit your business and how are you going to retire? These are things that a lot of business owners will say things like, my business is my retirement, my business is my exit strategy. But like, what does that really mean, right? Like, how do you translate that into saying, this is how my business is my retirement strategy. This is how my business is going to enable the things that I want in my life. So that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. What happens with business owners that do not have a clear vision for where they're going in their business is generally one of two things. One, they end up working all the time and grinding away constantly without intentionally creating a cash flow and building wealth, which delays their ability to actually be able to retire or relax and find financial and time freedom. Because they haven't defined what that end goal looks like, they never know if they actually get there, so they just keep going and going and going. The flip side might be they set huge goals that look good on paper, right? I want to get to 7 figures. I want to get to 10 figures. They're always chasing the next big thing without knowing whether any of those goals are actually in alignment with what they truly want. And again, sometimes they blow right past the point where they actually could capitalize on what they've built and keep just doing what works instead of constantly chasing the next dollar. So I don't want this to be you. I actually want to tell a story. This was one of my first ever CFO clients. And this is honestly, working with this client makes me do what I do. It has made me offer the services that I have for my clients because of my experience with this first one. So this business owner had on paper a very successful business, multiple $1 million revenue, 150 employees, very big brand recognition in the industry they were in their area. They were just well known to be like the best, right? But the business owner did not have, I don't want to say anything to show for it, but the business owner just did not have a retirement account saved up. There was still no plan for how am I actually going to step back and afford my life. There had been no intentional investing money personally to build wealth. And what resulted was the business owner was at a point where they were like, you know what? I have got to get out of this business. I'm past the point where I wanted to retire. My health is starting to suffer from being stressed out all the time in my business. What do I do? And they ended up selling and got, a fair amount of money for it. But the reality is, had they implemented some of these financial profit strategy pieces much earlier on in business, they could have gotten a lot more money. And they could have been building wealth along the way. They could have retired earlier. So this is what I want for people to do in their businesses now, is implement the things I'm telling you to implement so that you don't end up at that point where you are past the point of needing to retire and you feel like you're up against a wall. This is what happens when people say things like, my business is my retirement, okay? So a lot of times, again, people avoid thinking about these big picture goals and what it actually looks like to be wealthy because they say, I'm too busy. Maybe there's avoidance, right? There's fear around, oh my gosh, what would I actually do with all this money? There's discomfort at the idea of being wealthy. There's anxiety about people thinking in their heads rich people are bad, right? This is a very common money mindset thing that I see with a lot of business owners where they feel like if I actually become rich, a lot of the people that we see portrayed out there in media and in movies who are rich are also evil. And so we simultaneously are chasing money because we understand that having solid finances enables a lot of other things in life. But we also have this thought in our head that maybe rich people are really evil, right? This is one of my core beliefs, is this. You can be rich and do good in the world. There is not an either or of I can only do good, but I'll be poor. Or I can be rich, but I'm going to be evil and I can't do what I love. So I'm going to read to you, this is a quote from an actual Instagram post that I read a few months ago, and I saved it because I think it shows this mindset so well. Quote, when I think about what I want to be wealthy in, money is so far down the list. I want to be wealthy in love, joy, a sense of safety, belonging, and ease. It's not about having a rocket ship that flies into space. I was on board with this quote until we got to the last sentence, and let me tell you why. No, I don't think everyone needs to aspire to having a rocket ship that flies into space, but I think this quote exemplifies my point that so many business owners have this black and white thinking about being wealthy. It's either I'm going to focus on these intangible things, love, joy, safety, belonging, ease, or I'm going to be rich. And money is so far down the list. Y'all, we can do both, okay? So real quick for context, this quote was probably late 2021, fall 2021. It was around the time that we heard all these news stories about these billionaires spending tons of money on going off into space and building their own personal rocket ships. And I agree. I think that was just insane. Like thinking about how much money that cost and what that could have done in the world. Absolutely. Like I feel what this person was getting at with this quote. But you don't have to choose either. So here's my challenge. When you think about your long-term vision and what your rich life looks like, how can you do good and how can you find these intangible like feelings of belonging and safety and ease and be rich? Can we flip the script and do both? Why not? I personally believe that I can. And so I'm going to get there by being very intentional about my profit strategy for my business and thinking about what are the things I want to experience in my life personally that my business will afford me to do that I couldn't get in a corporate job, right? But also, what are things I can do to do good in the world? At the same time, you can be rich and do good, y'all, okay? So I want to ask 3 questions to help you get clear on what it would mean to you to be successful, to be wealthy, and be well in your life. Hey CEO, do you wish you had a CFO like me in your pocket to tell you exactly what to focus on in your business to increase your profits? Well, I can't be there in person for everyone all the time, so that's why I created a totally free quiz to help you create a profit strategy for your business and find a clear path forward to more cash flow and wealth. My 3-minute quiz will give you your exact best next step to creating that strategy based on where you are in your unique business. Plus, I'll give you 3 of my best tips to implement that next step in your business right now. To take my free quiz, visit the link in the show notes or go to trustyoungco.com/free profit quiz and find out your next step to a more profitable business. All right, let's look at these 3 questions. And what I want you to do at some point is take 30 minutes to an hour, sit down this week and write down whatever comes to mind for these questions. And this is going to be the foundation for your long-term business goal planning, long-term financial goals. And it might seem weird that we're talking about some of these I don't know what to say, like they're not necessarily like numbers in this episode, but your answers to these questions inform how you structure your business. They inform your profit strategy. And so it is so important to get clear on the answers to these questions. Question 1, what does a rich life look like to you? I use the word rich on purpose because I know when we say rich, a lot of times people mean rich in dollars, right? They're rich. But richness can also come from a life that is well lived, right? It's going to be partly in terms of dollars, but then partly non-financial things, right? These intangible things that is really what life is all about. Running a business is about money, but it is not only about money. I think that having a goal of hitting a certain dollar amount, you should have absolutely no shame about doing that. But also recognize too, your happiness in life is probably not going to directly come from how much money you have in the bank, right? At the same time though, not having financial stability, not having a stable income, not having money in the bank and living paycheck to paycheck in your business is going to directly cause a lot more stress and instability, right, in your life. And so how do we move beyond this as we think about long-term goals? So in your rich life, if you could wave a magic wand and have everything happen exactly the way you want, how would you spend your time? Who would you spend it with? Do you have a partner, a spouse, kids, friends, family? How do you take care of your mental health and your physical health? Maybe some of these goals go back to like, I just want to be healthy. That's certainly one of my goals, right? How do I implement that in my life? And yes, I'm asking this because, again, if you don't have the time now in your business to take care of your health, then as you think about your long-term business goals, you've got to figure out, how do I get to a place where I can do that? And what support do I need in my business to do that? This is why I ask these questions. Where would you live in terms of place, like city, but also in terms of what does your house look like? What would you do for fun? Do you want to work? If you do want to work, what would you be doing? Again, with the what would you do for fun? Where would you live? This again goes back to, how do you need to structure your business? If you don't want to work, maybe you want to be work optional, but still have an income stream. Then part of your profit strategy needs to be, well, what is that income stream that I don't have to work? What does that look like? And how am I going to build that up? And maybe that is investing in real estate and brokerage accounts and retirement accounts. Maybe that's investing in other businesses. Maybe that's structuring your business in a way where eventually you can step back and not have to work really at all day to day. When you imagine your rich life, I want you to get really detailed, right? Imagine what it looks like day to day from the time you wake up to when you go to bed. And this is going to help you figure out what it looks like for you to be wealthy without necessarily focusing on the numbers for now. Then, as you're thinking about goals, after you answer these questions I'm going to talk about in this episode, as you think about your business goals, you can ask yourself, do the goals that I have set for my business directly lead me to my vision for my rich life? If so, great, you're on track. If not, then you need to think about, what things do I need to put in place to get me there to the end goal, right? Do I need to hire more teams? More team members? Do I need to improve on processes that I have? What other things do I need to be able to up-level my business and myself to achieve these goals? Okay, so question number 1 is, define your rich life, especially with a focus on the non-financial stuff, and we will use your answers to inform what you need to do in your business. Question number 2 is, what are some things that feel expensive or luxurious or extravagant to you right now that you want to incorporate in your life? This is one of those principles of living a rich life and building wealth, I think is really important, is identifying what are the things that are important for you to spend on and focusing on, well, how can I afford to do these things without necessarily having all the other things in life that other people might have, to show off how rich they are? What are the things that you would have in your life that would make you feel successful? Like, I have made it. And when you say this, you might honestly feel like, oh my gosh, who am I to buy these things, right? Many of you probably already know, I use this as an example all the time. My ideal goal is, we live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I want to buy a piece of land on a lakefront, somewhere within an hour and a half to 2 hours of Charlotte, and build a lake house. Not some huge mansion, but also not like a tiny house, like some nice lake house. I have it pictured in my head with decks and patios and an outdoor fireplace or fire pit, and the TVs outside and comfy couches and places to read, and honestly probably an office to work. So if I want to go work there, I can do that too, with a dock and a boat. This is my goal, right? If you ask me, honestly, right now, the idea of having a second home that we can afford to buy that, build it, have all the upkeep on that, the idea of having that is something that feels really extravagant to me, but to me, that is something that would make me feel like I have truly made it, right? And again, it's not about the money, right? Like I'm not doing this to show off, look at my second home. It's literally just I want to have a place where my family can go. We can all kind of go hang out and chill. And I want to do this like in the next few years. Like how I'm trying to figure out what can I do in my business to generate the extra cash flow on top of what I already am paying myself that I can go put a down payment on this or go buy a piece of land, right? And start building that house. Because my son, he'll be 2 in about a month. I want to be able to enjoy these things while he's little. Like I don't want to wait until I'm retired to be able to live that lifestyle, right? This is one of the perks, I think, of running your own business is you can define whatever you want to do. Something else that I would like to do is go on a really fancy vacation every now and then. I mean, I'm not a huge traveler. I don't need to be traveling every week or every month, but it would be really cool to be able to spend the money on a vacation to go somewhere for like 2 weeks, first class tickets, fancy hotel, just doing whatever we want to do to enjoy the experience. That is a trip that I have never taken in my life, right? Every trip I've taken has been more affordable. And so one of the things that would make me feel like I've made it is going on that vacation and like actually spending the money to appreciate that experience. My last example is something that is a 2022 goal, and that is I want to be able to generate money above and beyond my normal monthly recurring revenue to go to a store at the fancy mall here, go in and buy a Chanel bag, one of those like crossbody chain strap Chanel bags. They're probably like $3,000 or $4,000, maybe $5,000, I don't know. I want to go into a store and experience that experience of going in and being able to just say, this is not a big deal, right? I'm not somebody who has to go buy that every month or every year even. I mean, heck, I tend to carry purses for like 5 years until they fall apart. But just being able to do that to me would be a really good sign of I've made it. And also it's a way to appreciate all of the hard work that I have put into my business to get it to the point to be able to do that, where that's not an issue for me. The main reason I ask this question is I want to get at your money mindset, right? When you think about buying this thing, right, what does your brain tell you? Does it say, oh, I've got this. This is so cool. This is exciting. No problem. This is not a big deal for me. If so, props to you. You've got a really killer money mindset, I think. For me, when I think about buying these things, I grew up, my family was certainly not poor by any means. We were very middle class, but we never would have spent money this way, right? And I still haven't even, I certainly would say I live differently than I did growing up, but I'm not quite at the point where I really will feel like I'm at my rich life. So thinking about spending money in this way personally causes my brain to freak out a little bit, right? And the imposter syndrome totally comes up for me. Who am I to want these things? It's not okay to spend money like this, right? You might also have some of these thoughts we talked about a few minutes ago, right? Rich people are bad. Rich people are evil. So if you begin to embody this rich person who has money to spend on these, extravagant things, like somehow you're going to turn evil. And so I want you to really pay attention when you think about spending money like this. What comes up? It might be scarcity mindset too, right? If I spend this money, then where's the rest of it? I'm going to spend all my money. I'm going to somehow go broke by spending on something that is extravagant, right? So I want you to identify the thoughts that come up about when you think about being successful and then figure out how are they blocking you from achieving your goals, right? The other thing is I want you to just even further define what your success looks like and how you're going to enjoy it, because I don't want you to grind away until you're past the point of retirement. I want you to know, like, when I get to this place, this is how I'll know, like, I'm in a good spot, okay? I can enjoy my life. All right. Question 3 is, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Okay. I think that when we think about being a business owner, one of the really great things that we're able to do just by being a business owner is have an impact on people around us. Obviously there's an impact on your family just by bringing in money and having a profitable business. You can impact your friends, your community, right? You are a leader as a business owner. And there really is not a cap on how much money you can earn in your business aside from whatever your own goals are and whatever your limitations are, whatever is holding you back from achieving those things, right? So one of the things I like to ask to help us get at this idea of you can do good and be rich is, one, we've defined when you're rich, like how are you going to enjoy that for yourself? But now let's flip it around and say, what are the things that I could do to do good in this world? Okay, that I can use my money to do good. And it happens a lot when you think about leaving a legacy. So I'll give you some examples, right? Here's the obvious ones. You might want to create generational wealth, meaning you build up an asset base, a net worth that you don't spend in your life, and then you're able to leave your kids with $1 million, right? Really think about that. I certainly come from a family that does not have that. I don't have any inheritance money coming to me. Like whatever I've built up, it's just by my own work, right? The idea of being able to leave my son in a place like a step ahead of where I was when I was his age is something that really gets me going, because I think, who better to help along, right, than my own family. So you might want to say, like, how can I live my rich life and enjoy my wealth, but then also maybe leave something to my kids? And it doesn't have to be $1 million. It could be $100,000, right? It could be setting them up so that they don't graduate college with student loan debt, right? Putting them that far ahead when they get out of college so that when they, get a job and they're making money, they don't have to pay off debt. That would be amazing. That's so much more than what a lot of people have these days. Your legacy might be as simple as having the time to spend with your family to create memories. That's part of what my goal of the lake house is for, right? It's to have that time to leave my kid with a memory of like, this is what my family was like growing up. We enjoyed each other. We had the time to do this. We weren't stressing about having to work all the time. It could also be as simple as, one of my goals is to always be available to structure my business so that when he does go off to school, I'm available to pick him up in the afternoons. So he doesn't have to get on the bus if he doesn't want to, right? Like, to me, that would be something I could do to like create this lasting impact. That's not about the money, but it is about how I structure my business, okay? Maybe you want to donate time or money or expertise to a charity you care about, right? Maybe you want to leave in your will, right? I want to leave $500,000 to the local pet shelter, right? And save all these animals' lives. I'm using an example. Maybe it's something in your community, right? Like maybe you could restore a park, a building. Some people I've seen will create low-income housing, right? They fund like this entire building in their community that they need. And maybe they do something like create an after-school program for kids, right? You can have such an impact with your money on those around you. And I think we kind of forget, right? Having money is a source of power, right? And so can we use this power to do good things for those around us? I'm not saying you have to do these things, but just as you think about how am I going to be rich and do good in the world, how can I do that? How do I define like doing good at the same time? I have some more examples, right? The list honestly could go on. My personal legacy goal is in part creating generational wealth, having an inheritance, right, for my family. Another thing that I do want to do is I want to create a fund to invest in small businesses, primarily in businesses owned by women and people of color. These people, women and people of color, tend to have historically less access to funding through traditional routes like banks. Just statistically speaking, there's less women-owned businesses getting to that $1 million mark. And I think that I can use my cash flow that I generate in my business to fund other businesses and then exponentially multiply my impact on the world, okay? So think about how you would like to leave your legacy. how you can take steps towards doing that now, and what do you have to do to create that kind of money and time in your business. All right. So 3 questions. Defining what your rich life looks like. What does it look like day to day? Get really specific, focusing on the non-financial stuff first. What are some things that would feel expensive or extravagant to you? When you think about it now, you're like, oh, wow, like, would I actually be able to do that one day? Write that down, right? Question 3, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? How do you want to do good and be rich? And then once you write all these things down, give it some time, let it simmer, let it percolate, right? And then step back and say, compared to where I am now in my business, do I have the time? Do I have the money coming in, the cash flow to do the things that I have laid out in my plan, right? In my vision. And from that, you ask yourself, what is it going to look like? What does my business look like when I get to this point? Maybe, your option would be, I just want to retire. I want to be able to wind my business down and have a nest egg over here to fund the rest of my life. Great. Maybe it's, I want to sell my business, right? What does that look like? Maybe it's, I want to put people in all of the jobs in my business, and then I'll be able to just step back and be the true business owner and not be the CEO anymore. Whatever it looks like, you just have to get very clear on what things do you need to work on implementing in your business financially? How much are these things going to cost, right? Hiring a team, focusing on your processes, coming up with new products or services, up-leveling your skills. Like, how much do these things cost, and how can you do that in your business? So this is step 1 of creating a profit strategy for your business, is defining the end goal. And so once you get really clear on the end goal, it helps so much to be able to take actionable, intentional steps towards achieving that goal along the way. Okay. So what I want you to do is go and jot down your answers to these questions and let me know. What do you come up with? What's your thing? I love to ask people the question number 2. Tell me, what's the expensive thing that you would buy? I always just get such fun answers to those questions. All right. Okay, so that is all I've got for this episode. Go and figure out your long-term vision, get super, super clear, and figure out what changes you're going to make in your business to achieve that in the long term and in 2022. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Now, I want you to go take some action. What's one thing you can do this week to create more profit in your business? Send me a DM on Instagram at YoungCoCFO and share your action item with me. If you have a question or topic you'd like me to dive into, or if you're feeling empowered about taking charge of your finances, let's continue the conversation. Go to profitandprosper.co to submit a question or topic for me to talk about on the show. And because we all profit and prosper better with friends, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe wherever you listen, and share the episode. Make sure you tag me at YoungCoCFO on Instagram so I can give you some love, and I'll see you in the next episode.